welcome to Balanced Black Girl.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. I've actually wanted to have you on the podcast for so long. So I'm so excited. It's finally time.
It's so funny when I reached out, I think you were on a little break too.
Yeah, last year.
And I was like, is she retiring? Because I already know how this can be taxing. So
right. Well, yeah. Okay. I would love to get into that because I've followed you and followed your career for a while. And something that I really admire about you is that you have taken a lot of different career turns and career pivots. Can you walk us through some of the biggest like pivots?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I started my career as everyone came to know me. I had a lot of different things going on before this, but I started my career as a celebrity gossip blogger, which was over 16 years ago, I believe. So that's even crazy for me to even think about. But yeah, I started as a celebrity blogger and that blew up pretty quickly. I feel NecoleBitchy.com for people who are listening, just in case they're like, well, who was she? And so I was on that beautiful journey, had an amazing time. I mean, I was on a 777 tour with Rihanna. We went to 7 countries in 7 days and watched 7 shows.
Wow.
And then they made a Fox special out of it. When I look back at my life back then, it reminds me of influencers now, how they get to go on the trips. They get to stay in free hotel rooms. I was always around celebrities. So it was a very glamorized life, but it was, also very taxing. I was very unhealthy. I was outside of my body. I felt like, how you're just kind of living in fight or flight mode, survival mode. And I was always wondering what's next for me. Like, I know I don't want to live my life as a spectator to other people's lives. And so in the 7th year, which was 2015, I decided to shut the site down and transition into what is now known as Exo Nicole, which is one of the leading lifestyle destinations for women of color. I wanted to create a site where Black women could go and really talk about their mental health, their sexual wellness, relationships, dating. And at the time, the internet had become so obsessed with celebrities that I looked around and I was like, where would my young cousin go to read real stuff outside of, celebrities and something that's going to help her evolve and get to know herself. And so that's what inspired Exo Nicole. And within 2 years, that site was acquired by Will Packer, a famous producer. He's produced things like Girls Trip and Straight Outta Compton and Ready to Love and all these great films and TV shows. I stayed at Exo Nicole 5 years after launching, which that's a whole other conversation. But since we're getting into Balanced Black Girl, that was, I won't say a traumatic experience for me, but it was it was something I still haven't quite grasped. It's like, every time I talk about it and I'm like, darn it, I'm gonna tear up because it's something that still affects me.
Yeah.
I want to give myself grace too if I cry talking about Exo Nicole.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, I remember last week I was talking about selling my site on a podcast and I'm bawling, crying. And I remember I got so mad with myself. I was like, I'm not doing any more podcasts for a while until I'm over this thing. And it's like, but why? Like, it's real feelings. It's something that still makes me tear up. It's someone that had a baby, raised her baby and then gave it to someone else to continue to raise and is not in that baby's life anymore. That's what it feels like to me. But to finish my pivot story, I sold Exo Nicole. I stayed on for 5 years after it was sold. And during that time, just trying to find myself and what I would do next. And a non-compete clause, which I'm saying this after this bill was passed that non-compete clauses are not allowed anymore. But I signed a non-compete clause at the time. So I wouldn't be able to go spring up another media company, which that's all I knew. So I'm like, what am I going to do next? And the opportunity came to launch My Happy Flo, which is a women's wellness brand. We're revolutionizing the relationship that women have with their periods. And we specialize in holistic, all natural products that help women have pain-free periods, as well as reduce their risk of conditions like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, and even infertility. So that is my pivot story. And to be honest, I look back on the Nicole Bitchy days. I look back on the Exo Nicole days. I'm like, every part of the story was necessary for me to get where I am now in this beautiful part of my journey. So we'll talk about that later on in the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I just appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to come on and have this conversation, and even like letting the tears flow a little bit, because we do that here sometimes.
Thank you. And yeah, like I said, I'm still giving myself grace. I'm still going through the grieving. But yeah. I appreciate that you use the word grief, because that makes so much sense. When you create something and then you build it, and even when you step away from it, you would, it's natural. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it would be weird to not grieve it.
And I think people have to understand too, because there's a lot of conversations around Black founders that sell their companies. The thing that makes us so different is a lot of times we've started a company because we saw a void. Like there's a lot of people selling the company. Starting a company because they see it's something popular that's happening, right? And they started with funding already, when we're talking about people who are not Black. And the name of the game is to just scale it very quickly and then sell it. With us, we started because we see a void. We're trying to solve a problem. And then since we're not raising money in the beginning, we're so embedded into our companies that like my readers was my community. I had apps, I had the Exo Tribe app, and we were in there during the pandemic, and I'm doing weekly girls' night ins and happy hours. And so I was so attached to the community that came with Exo Nicole. So when I sold it, it was like me leaving a community that I built. And there was a period where I felt very isolated in that. Like, well, and it's like, girl, if you don't go get some real friends, like, girl, go get some real friends, like build your life. Like, but I had made Exo Nicole my life. And so, I learned so many valuable lessons in that. I won't say that I have the same, I love my brand, My Happy Flo, but I'm a little bit detached in terms of one day I know I may have to raise money to get this product in as many women's hands as I need to. But in order to raise money, you need an exit strategy. No one's giving you money and you don't know where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, if you're going to exit, if you're going to IPO. Like, they want to know how they're getting their money back.
Yeah.
It's like, your idea is cute, but girl, how am I getting my money back?
Yeah.
And so now that I know more about business and I've read up on the things and I've talked to founders and I've gone through my process, it's like, don't get so attached that you can't let go a little bit when it's time for the greater good of this product and the women that it will benefit.
That makes sense. And that sounds like a healthy perspective to have. And it's also interesting that you say that, because this is also the first brand that isn't named after you. Like your other two brands had your name in it.
And that was on purpose.
So it's like, that identity piece is absolutely going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy to still, Exo Nicole is still up today. You can go to exonicole.com. Mm-hmm. The writers are still writing their butts off. They're still doing amazing things. They're putting out podcasts. They're doing events. And my name is on it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing, but I'm proud of the work they're doing. I'm proud. There was a time where I thought it was swaying from my vision, and they got it back on track, and I'm proud of, the way they're growing the brand.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. Yeah. So in your transition from media entrepreneurship to then wellness, I would love to hear a little bit more about, were there signs within you whenever it was time to pivot and do something else? Like, what did that look like that made you want to transition to the next thing? And was it difficult to go from media to wellness? Because those two industries are really, really different.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the sign for anyone that's listening, and when it's time to move, is when you no longer enjoy the work. You no longer enjoy waking up and getting at it. Like you should be excited to get up out of bed and live out your purpose every day. And so that happened for me quite early in the celebrity gossip days, probably like 2 years in. But things were moving so fast and life was moving so quickly. And it's like, and money was coming at me very fast as well. I knew it wasn't sustainable. I knew it wasn't something I was going to be doing for 20 years. But I also needed time to figure out, what do I like? And I must have thought that I loved writing about celebrities. But I'm going to tell you, every Thanksgiving and Christmas, I just spent the first Christmas with a family. Oh, Lord. Here we go. Sorry.
It's okay.
But I didn't realize I hadn't spent Christmas with family in 20 years because my parents died at the ages of 41 and 42. And my family used to gather at my grandmother's, and she passed as well. And so once she passed, like, everybody just kind of went and did their own thing. And so Christmases, especially as a celebrity gossip blogger, I'm in the house blogging about everybody else's Christmas, and they're putting out their like cute pictures and everybody's in flannel PJs and dinners and vacations these celebrities are going on. And it became painful every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, spectating, like I mentioned earlier, other people's lives that had these beautiful lives, I felt. And there was a sadness in me. So that was part of it where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I literally want to log off. And what's interesting, my last 2 years at Necole Bitchy, I would take off from right before Christmas through New Year's. Mm-hmm. The site would just sit. And so 1 year I went to Europe, Paris, London, etc. And then 1 year I went to Dubai. And that made Christmases leading up to New Year just so much better for me.
Yeah.
And it took a lot for me just to say, I'm going to let this site sit, and they were, the readers pissed because there was a lot happening during Christmas break. You had break babies, celebrities having break babies. Like, there was a lot going on between, but I was so grateful I didn't have to blog about it.
And gave yourself that space.
Absolutely. To just unplug and like tap into my own life and my own purpose. And I do think me being able to go away for 10 to 14 days at the end of every year did drive me closer to, okay, I'm going to navigate out of this. I'm going to do something different. And so, in 2015 is when I really took the leap to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I was like, Lord, am I going to cry during this whole interview?
If you feel the urge to do so, it is okay. We have like a safe space for all of our feelings. So I'm honored if you feel, comfortable enough to express yourself here, for sure. And I would love to also hear how your own personal wellness journey kind of played into this, because I would imagine as your work changed.
So what happened when I knew I wanted to get out of gossip blogging, I moved to Arizona. And it's because I had heard Oprah and all these famous people talking. They would go out there and just get poured into when they had burnout or depression or going through mental health issues. So I'm like, I don't know what's in Arizona, but they going, so I'm going to go. So I kind of moved out there on a whim because I knew for me to go through my transition, I couldn't be in New York or LA, places people already had this perception of me. I needed to isolate myself. And so I moved to Arizona at the end of 2014, going into 2015. And that's where my wellness journey began because honestly, not sitting in traffic, you don't understand how much time you buy back. I literally bought back about 4 hours a day. Wow. And then, and so I'm up there, okay, what am I going to do with this 4 hours? So I'm going to take some Pilates. I got into bodybuilding and ended up becoming a professional bodybuilder. I started cooking and eating whole foods and vegetables. And in my bodybuilding journey, my period had went away for a second. And I knew like I wasn't eating. I knew like something was going on. So I went to a doctor. Unbeknownst to me, it was a holistic doctor. Most of my the deaths in our family, they were on medication a long time. So I knew medication wasn't making us better. And this holistic doctor, she had took my blood work and she told me, like, if you keep down this path, you're going to have the same fate as your parents. Like, you're extremely malnourished, deficient in every vitamin out there, extremely dehydrated. Like this, and they couldn't even take my heart rate. Like, they tried to take my heart rate and they was like, girl, you are alive? Like, it was that faint. And so instead of giving me medication, she gave me this custom vitamin blend that she put together. And I promise you, within days, I felt alive. And it was the first time I was like, what's in these vitamins? Right. It was the first time I really learned anything about vitamins, knew anything about vitamins. And so it made me go and get this book called You Are What You Eat. And it's by this doctor who people would come to her on their deathbed and she would nurse them back to health through whole foods and vitamins. And it made me obsessed with healing through whole foods and vitamins. And so, yeah, that's how the journey into supplementation and health and wellness really developed over in Arizona, and this visit to a holistic doctor. And then that's what really got me really into holistic health.
Yeah. Yeah. It just sounds like a like fate moment that you happen to go to that holistic doctor and they set you on this whole new path.
This whole new path. And you know, the funniest part about this story, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but I remember in my goodbye letter to close down Necole Bitchy in 2015, I mentioned something about like, and I was hinting around to me launching Exo Nicole, but I said, you know, I feel like I've been giving you the junk food for so long. Now I want to give you the vitamins. And I just thought about that months ago and said, you now have a vitamin company.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Well, you spoke
8 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
Always those little Easter eggs of like what's ahead.
Right. Little
when you don't
droplets,
even know.
Little downloads that come. Yeah.
Wow.
So I thought about that and my mind was completely blown.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned talking a bit about how your period had gone away during that time. I would love to talk more about menstrual health because it's something that is so important. So many of us have either dysregulated periods, issues with our periods, whether we're experiencing PCOS, endometriosis, or just it's irregular, it's painful, debilitating. I would love to talk a little bit more about just that landscape, why that's happening to us so much and ways we can improve it.
Yeah, well, I will say the pandemic was the best thing that could have happened to me because I probably read every period book out there. And that's when my mind was blown at how, first of all, important our period is to our overall health. Like, I think we've been taught that periods are supposed to be painful. They're supposed to be uncomfortable when you first come on your period as a teen. I think a lot of people heard you can get pregnant now. And so how can I have a positive perspective of my period when everyone around me is like, oh my God, you get pregnant now. Let me see if we can put you on birth control. Or like, it feels like this thing that's not, it doesn't feel positive. And when I realized how important, like our period is like a fifth vital sign, just like when they take your heart rate, you know, they want to look at your tongue, blood pressure at the doctor. Your period, if it's coming consistently, what the symptoms are, is a vital sign to what's your overall health. And when I realized that, I was like, we need to change the relationship women have with their periods. Like, look at it as your body's monthly report card. That's how I look at mine. Like, obviously, back then when my period disappeared, and I knew I wasn't pregnant, so I wasn't going to doctor to get a pregnancy test, but I knew there was something in me that was like, something isn't right. Unfortunately, I think a lot of women are like, we're living with conditions like PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids for a long time because we haven't been taught what a healthy period looks like. And to be honest, if you have a period that's over 7 days long, if it's, you know, prolonged, it's irregular, heavy clots, those are all signs and symptoms, like early signs and symptoms of these conditions. But since people don't know that they go 10 years, maybe even more, without being diagnosed. And a lot of them are put on birth control, which masks the symptoms. So they feel like it's healed it. And you probably have heard this from someone before where they come off birth control and they're like, oh my God, my symptoms then came back. Like, no, it was the birth control that fixed it. So I have to go back on. No, your birth control is no longer masking it anymore. And the condition has worsened in the background. And so that's what's so important about the work I do at My Happy Flo, which can be a little taxing, the unlearning of what we thought we knew for so long. Because even when I start talking about birth control, and when I learned about birth control, especially the synthetic hormones and how they actually can increase our risk for things like breast cancer and fibroid growth, my mind was blown away. It was absolutely blown away. I felt like I had been lied to my entire life. And so, yeah, that's how and why I got into My Happy Flo. A lot of it has to do with my mom's breast cancer journey. I feel like if I knew what I knew now about nutrition and also what causes breast cancer tumors, which is the same thing that causes fibroid growth, which is abundance of estrogen in the body, I could have helped save her life, but I didn't know. And also my friends, let's say I have a friend group of 5 and I can think of them in my head. Out of a friend group of 5, there's no reason why I'm the only one that has not been diagnosed with fibroids. And out of that same group of 5, 3 has been recommended a hysterectomy, and out of that same group of 5, 2 out of 3 got the hysterectomy because they weren't given any other options. And so for me, I knew this is a solid epidemic, especially when it comes to Black women.
Yeah.
And I think the more I got educated on estrogen dominance, which is normally if you're estrogen dominant, you either have low progesterone or too much estrogen. And that's what mostly Black women, a lot of us have estrogen dominance, which is why 80% of us end up being diagnosed with fibroids before the age of 50. Like that number to me is
it's wild.
We need to be out in the streets with picket signs.
Yeah.
That statistic is crazy. And I think it's 60% before the age of 35.
Wow.
So when I know numbers like that, and I know a lot of the cause of that has to do with, not only like the environment, toxins in our hair care. Of course, we've heard about relaxers, but then the synthetic hormones and these birth controls that they've been putting us on in years. I'm like, it's a lot.
It is, yeah. And I think what's so hard is like, just the education piece isn't there. The idea of like, okay, if somebody chooses to take birth control, that's fine. They can choose to, but it's important that we let people know here is everything that is happening in your body when you do these things. And then you can make the most informed decision for you. That's not what's happening. It's just
no education
given
there,
out widely.
Yeah. And I do think doctors could at least educate us about what we're about to put in our bodies before they give us the birth control. I will say there's wonderful people on Instagram that are doing the education. Dr. Jolene Brighton, I think her name is. She has the book Beyond the Pill. There's a book called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control. But the education that I have that I want to give out on this podcast now, for years, they even said it would regulate our periods. What it did, it just shut off our ovulation. And that last week, if we're talking about birth control pills, that last week where it's the placebo pills, you have a withdrawal bleed. So it's not a real period. It's just you're bleeding because you're not getting these hormones that you were getting the rest of the month. And I heard that and I'm like, what? So it reminds me of a lot of our customers come to us and they've just been having a hard time getting pregnant after birth control, and all these different symptoms come back. And I look at it like a car. You get this car, right? And you sit out in the yard, but you haven't started it up for 10 to 15 years. And then one day you want to go and start it like it's a new car. It's probably going to be like, take a minute to get revved up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the same with, your body coming off of birth control, like your ovulation has been halted for years. A lot of these women have been on birth control 10 years, maybe even longer. And now it's trying to figure out how to ovulate again. It's trying your natural hormone production is trying to, because when you're on birth control, these are synthetic hormones that are like, taking over the natural rhythm of your hormone production. That's where the side effects like weight gain, mood disorder, depression come from. Like birth control could even change who you're attracted to. You come off and no longer want to marry your fiance. Like, you know what? You're really not my cup of tea.
Yeah. I see clearly now.
Yeah, they talk about that in Beyond the Pill. And I was like, what? So, but just knowing the information, because there are a lot of women that are getting on birth control because they don't want to have kids, but there are a lot of women that were put on birth control because of hormonal acne and period pain. And so that's where it becomes a problem to me. When you didn't diagnose her, you didn't test her, you didn't go in and look and see if she had fibroids, you didn't see if she had PCOS, you just said, here, take these, and it'll get rid of the pain.
Yeah, it's not getting to the root cause
exactly.
of the issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You had mentioned estrogen dominance earlier, which is super important to understand. I would love to talk a little bit more about that, because I don't know if it's super common knowledge about the relationship between estrogen and progesterone and why it's important to make sure you have adequate amounts of those.
A balance of both. So estrogen dominance is when you have an abundance of estrogen, not enough progesterone to balance it out. And so what happens is symptoms of estrogen dominance is PMS. So number one, PMS, they told you it's normal, but this is the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance, which could put you at high risk for developing fibroids and breast cancer and all those things. So PMS, bloating, weight gain, also fatigue, infertility, prolonged periods, all the symptoms that we equate with periods are normally estrogen dominant symptoms. That's what's the wild part. So probably over 80% of women, especially women of reproductive age, has hormonal imbalances. So yeah.
Wow.
And the thing about estrogen dominance, again, you wanted to know the relationship. Estrogen, too much estrogen in the body is what accelerates fibroid growth. Fibroids feed off of estrogen. Breast cancer tumors feed off of estrogen. Cysts feed off of estrogen. So you know how you hear people and they got this big like grapefruit sized cysts. Normally it's probably because they had a lot of estrogen. And so that's the important thing about our product. And I don't think I talk about it enough. Like I play up the vitamins a lot in our product, but we have two hero ingredients. One is called DIM and one is called indole-3-carbinol. They are highly studied, especially indole-3-carbinol. Indole-3-carbinol is highly studied in the prevention of breast cancer, cervical cancer, and colon cancer. And the way these work, they actually balance out the estrogen in the body. So they aid in estrogen detoxification from the liver. And so a lot of times our customers will start My Happy Flo and they would notice dark urine. It's those toxins being detoxed from the body. And then they'll notice the week before their period, they're like, wait, I don't even normally I'm depressed during this week. My energy is up. I don't even wait, I'm used to feeling PMS symptoms the week before. I'm not feeling it. And then the week of their period normally comes and typically it's pain-free. So a lot of times people will be like 18 years and this is my first pain-free period. Like, wow. Girl, I feel like I've been bamboozled all my life.
Yeah.
The flow is different. It's bright red. It's more like instead of, and I don't want to get too graphic, but anyone with a period know the periods with the clots and the dark blood. This one is more of a bright red blood. It's more flow. And that's a healthy period. That's signs of a healthy period. So we give every first customer a booklet that really walks through what a healthy period looks like. It walks them through nutrition tips and also self-care tips. Like, here's some self-care tips for your period week. Like, really take the time. I have a period ritual. When I know my period is coming, I go buy the chocolate. I allow myself to have the chocolate. I run the bubble baths the week before. And I really pour into myself and treat myself gentle in that week leading up to my period. And to be honest, I haven't had a painful period in over 7 years. But I don't want to go back either. Yeah. I'm okay with not going back.
Mm-hmm. Something else that I was thinking too, and this isn't a conversation that I hear a lot, but I was thinking it as you were describing the importance of making sure that estrogen gets detoxified in the liver.
Absolutely.
I wonder if alcohol plays a role as
it
well.
does. Alcohol, high sodium food.
Yeah.
That's what, and hormone health goes hand in hand with gut health. Mm-hmm. So I always tell women, like, the perfect pairing is My Happy Flo and a probiotic. And we have flaxseed in My Happy Flo, which has high source of fiber, because we want you to have those regular bowel movements. It is not normal to go like 3 to 4 days and you're not moving bowels. I try to move bowels at least once a day, because it's the detoxification process, not just toxins, not just the food you're eating, but also, again, those excess estrogens that need to leave the body.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about the fact that your customers also get their booklet with just the period education, allowing them to create their own rituals. I feel like that's a really important way to help reframe their cycles for them in ways that we just weren't taught.
Absolutely. I wanted to make one for teens as well, so that there's a teen experience and it really breaks down the 4 phases of their menstrual cycle. Also, what's happening in their body. I was going to make it more about congratulating them for blooming. This is your bloom season. Making it a very positive versus, I have a friend and she has, she's in her late 30s and she has a 13 or 12-year-old. Now she's 14, but her daughter started My Happy Flo when she was 12. She's a ballerina. And she's like, my daughter loves getting her period. And she's like, I feel like it's, and she loves getting her My Happy Flo in the mail. And she was like, it's such a difference between when I was her age. I didn't know what was going on. The doctors is pushing me on birth control. My parents, popping painkillers. We don't even know how to use a tampon. Now we have, organic pads and tampons. We have period panties. We have menstrual cups. We have a lot more resources than they had back in the day. So I'm so super proud of how far we've come when it comes to periods. I don't feel like it's a taboo topic. I can go to any given brunch and they're talking about periods at the table. And I'm like, yes. They're always talking about periods because we can now. And I believe a lot of women used to live in shame, the shame of dating. And do I have to lay down a towel at night because I'm bleeding through pads and tampons? I won't say I'm rebranding. I'm repositioning My Happy Flo because I don't want it to be on the market as just another PMS supplement. We're about to go into clinical trials in a few weeks.
Amazing.
And we're positioning it as a supplement that alleviates heavy flows, because that's just something that's very common, especially amongst women who have fibroids.
Yep.
So a supplement that alleviates heavy flows and debilitating cramping. Like, I'm focused on those two. Of course, it helps with the mood swings and fatigue and energy, but those are the 2 common things people are coming to My Happy Flo for.
What does the clinical trial process look like for a brand?
So we put together the protocol first. It outlines like what this product is, what we're going to do in the trial. We're going to bring in 40 women. I partnered with a lab, so we're not doing this. This is a legit lab that does this. Yeah. Well, first, they have to get approval from IRB, which is an internal review board. And they approve all research, like people that do research in college, clinical trials, et cetera. Once they review, they approve it, they start recruiting the 40 participants. I did ask, could there be women of color, at least 50%? We don't get a lot of visibility in clinical trials. I don't know if it's because we're skeptical. Like, you're not going to use me as a guinea pig, or if, it's, racial disparity. I don't know what it is, but we don't show up in a lot of clinical trials. And so I wanted to know, especially since we have such a large African-American base, if that could be possible. But yeah, the 40 participants are going to get their iron levels and their vitamin D levels checked, the blood work at the beginning of the trial, just because I also want to prove a case that we help combat anemia, which if you're a woman with heavy flows, you're at high risk for iron deficiency. I think we could lose up to 1 or 2 megs of iron during our period week. So that's why we're probably one of the only period supplements that have iron in it. But I thought about that, like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We have to help them replenish those iron stores. And we have vitamin D3 because 80% of women that I believe have fibroids have a vitamin D deficiency. So they started seeing the link between vitamin D deficiency and fibroids.
And that could make sense as to why Black women are so severely impacted because we have darker skin. The sun doesn't give us as much vitamin D.
Even if we're using sunscreen, we're blocking out the vitamin D we would get from the sun even more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're hugely impacted because of that vitamin D deficiency as well. So, yeah, 40 participants, they're going to be on the product for 3 months. At the end of each month, they're filling out like the forms and paperwork with their symptoms and checking in. We get updated every month. I could have made this only 60 days because we do ask customers to allow up to 2 months to see the full benefits. But I just wanted to see what would 3 months look like. And yeah, the biggest thing is retaining the participants, making sure they see it through from beginning to end. We probably will lose about 10 people throughout the trial. So at least if we have 30 good, solid people, it's still enough to say, hey, this is proven. And then we could say our product is clinically studied, science-backed, science research, because we went the legit route. And not a lot of supplements get clinical trials.
Right.
It's more so pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because supplements, they don't have to.
They don't regulate. FDA doesn't regulate supplements.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wanted people to know I stand behind my formulation. I stand behind our claims and our benefits. You will see a lot of supplements say we use clinically tested ingredients. That just means vitamin D was clinically, or indole-3-carbinol was clinically studied. It doesn't mean their actual formulation was clinically studied.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because honestly, I mean, I know I didn't, when I would hear something is like clinically tested or whatever, I know that that's a good thing, but I didn't know what that process meant.
Yeah, actually going in and they're testing it on a controlled group of people. And we're not guessing, because we can look at the reviews and say this product definitely works. Like, the 5-star reviews, women, I've just seen even women that have bled for months on end. I think the biggest thing for me with this brand, and it's hard for me not to be angry, but we have such a large African-American demographic, and to see them bleeding out, like, they've gone to the doctor has put them on, whether it's a birth control or a hormone or something, and they just continue to bleed, right? That is not normal. So now she's in jeopardy of, anemia and some other stuff, but she's been bleeding there was a customer bleeding for over 72 days, I believe, 86 days. And she started the product, and within, I believe, 3 to 5 days, the bleeding stopped. And I was just like,
72 days.
Yeah. And like I said, her healthcare provider had put her on a birth control or some type of hormone or something to try. She went on Twitter. I know these stories because they tweet, or they ain't coming to me directly. But this girl tweets, and she tweets our order confirmation. She said, "This is my last ditch effort." And she did a screenshot of her period from her period app. And it had been running like 70, 80, 90 days or so. It actually said the number. And I was like, keep us posted on your progress. And she comes back and she was like, bleeding has stopped. I've been on it for however many days. And I think within 14, all her symptoms were gone that she was having. And she was just like, unbelievable. Like, this has changed my life.
Yeah. I mean, people are getting their lives back.
Getting their lives. And I think we don't realize how much our period impacts our overall quality of life, especially if it's not a great period. When I did surveys, it impacted women's confidence, their self-esteem, their sex lives and intimacy, their body image and how they viewed themselves. Like, can you imagine you feel like your body is working against you versus with you? Their finances, because they're calling out of work or they can't perform their jobs as, at the highest quality of when they are their best selves. And so this impacts so many areas of our lives. It's something that I just was like, that's why my mission was change the relationship that women have with their periods. Because you're actually changing the relationship you have with your body overall. And that changes everything, even how you perceive yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I am entering my mid-30s this year, which is trying to, and something
how does that feel?
I'm getting better. Earlier this year, I was like
the meltdowns.
I was freaking out, but I'm seeing it as a blessing. It's I'm grateful. But something that I am starting to think more about is perimenopause. I'm also like watching my mom go through the menopause process right now. And I'm also thinking, just seeing how difficult that process is. It's like, if we can get a grasp on our hormones while we're younger, we're probably setting ourselves up for a better perimenopausal experience when we get to that point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so crazy is I don't think I heard the term perimenopause until maybe 2 years ago.
No one talked about it at all.
They weren't even talking about menopause.
Right.
Like no preparation.
Right. And they made it seem like, well, one day your periods go away and that's it. And that's not it.
Yeah. And for you to officially be in menopause, you have to have not had a period for a year.
Yeah.
So your period can go away. And that's so crazy about age. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell y'all my age. I sometimes put up my age and sometimes I don't. This podcast, I'm not. But I will say, every time I miss a day of my period, like it could just be one day late. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going into menopause. Now, mind you, your period has to disappear for a year. But if I miss one day, I'm like, oh my God, I can't have kids no more. I'm going into menopause. Like, I'm so dramatic. And I'm like, girl, bring it back in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real. It's real. And I'm glad that people are finally talking about it because there's so many symptoms and things related to perimenopause that I had no idea when it comes to brain fog and memory loss and weight gain and things where it's women are like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
Like, and no,
hormones are all over the place.
Right.
Hormones are having a wild party.
Yeah. And people just don't talk about it.
Well, the hormones are having the wild party they were having when we were teens.
Right. Exactly. And it's like every decade, we just unlock new levels.
Unlock new levels of the hormones. So that's why hormone balance is so important. Our hormones literally rule even how we perceive things. I would say I used to be off the rocker. Like, especially after my competing days, I didn't know how bad competing in that low-fat diet really messed up my hormones. It crashed my metabolism. I came to Atlanta, gained like 20 pounds overnight. And my hormones, I was raging. And the way I would talk to people, like, and I would get angry so fast, but also depression and suicidal thoughts all the time. I rarely get sad. I might get disappointed. I might have a moment, but I rarely get the sadness and the depression that I used to get. It used to be, it just used to be debilitating. I couldn't do anything. I could barely function. And I definitely contribute that to just getting my hormones in balance. It's such a big deal.
And you being yourself again.
Being yourself. I've had women reach out and like, this saved my marriage. Like, wow. This saved my marriage. And we just have no idea how much of, like, again, our perspective on things, it could definitely be due to hormones, our mood swings and things like that. So yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, it is.
And that's why, like, when I first started My Happy Flo, we were a period brand. We're all about periods. Now we're a hormone health brand. The line of products are going to expand and it's going to target other different hormonal imbalances we have. Like some people have thyroid conditions, blood sugar imbalances, stress is high cortisol, adrenal fatigue. And so I want this whole suite of products that people can bundle together, even to get better sleep at night. And that be their wellness bundle. Like I got my Happy Flo, even menopause. We have a menopause supplement that's coming out. And really just touch on the different stages of our hormone health as we're going from menarche to menopause.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
And supporting ourselves throughout that whole time
Supporting
span.
ourselves and giving ourselves grace as well. What I like about naming my company My Happy Flo is that we could venture into different aisles, right? If I wanted to, we could do pads and tampons. If I wanted to, we could do feminine washes. We could do, because My Happy Flo is all about being in a happy flow of life.
Yeah.
And I wanted the name to represent something very affirming, like it's because I think the first name I came up with was Your Happy Flo. And then it was like, no, this is My Happy Flo.
That everybody kind of has that ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, Necole, I feel like I learned so much about just my health, my reproductive system, hormones. So if people are interested in My Happy Flo, where can they find it? Where can they learn more?
They can go to myhappyflo.co. By the time this episode comes out, we will have our new website up, which is far more educational. I think it does speak to the statistics around melanated women specifically. Like I don't want to run off people who are not Black, because this is an every woman problem we're dealing with. But I do call out the statistics that affect especially African-American women. And we have a love letter, like we say on the site, this is a love letter to women who have been brushed off by their doctors, who pain has never been taken seriously, that have been looked at as sensitive and emotional versus like giving grace because their hormonal cycle. So yeah, we have that going on. So you can find My Happy Flo at myhappyflo.co. We're also launching on Amazon in a few weeks. So for the Amazon people who love to fill a cart up with different things, we're going to be there for you as well. If you have HSA, FSA benefits, you can definitely check out with your benefits card, or you can apply right on the site for a letter of medical necessity and get reimbursed. And so, yeah, we're out here doing really big things.
Yes.
I'm super excited about. You can also check us out on Instagram, My Happy Flo, and Twitter, My Happy Flo.
Amazing. We'll make sure we have.
And Flo
everything.
is FLO, not FLOW.
Perfect. We'll have everything spelled correctly, linked correctly in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely.
To make it easy for folks to find. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Balanced Black Girl. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, and we come out with new episodes like this every week. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.